We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara, Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 40b. The Gemara is now bringing a brisa to try to understand the machlokes of whether the vidui, whether the confession is ma'akev when it comes to the vidui by the Sa'ir HaMishtaleach on Yom Kippur. So the brisa says, Yomar Chai Lifnei Hashem Lechaper Olav. It says that the Sa'ir HaMishtaleach, it has to stand alive before Hashem for a kapara. Rashi says, Al Korchach Lelamdeinu. What is this pasuk here for? It's to teach us, Shim Meis, that if the animal dies, it means to say you're going to have to replace it. You have to bring another one. Because if not, what is this pasuk for? If the point of the pasuk is to say that you don't send off the Sa'ir La'azazel until after you do the Matan Domim of the other goat, so Lichtov, it should just say, Yomad Lefnei Hashem Lechaper Olav. It should stand before Hashem for a kapara. Chai Lamali. What's the idea? It should stand alive. Must be the pasuk is saying Yomar Chai. It has to be alive, meaning if it dies, you got to bring another one. So that's how the Bryce is going to understand the pasuk. Yomar Chai Lefnei Hashem Lechaper Olav Ad Mosai Yezokak Lamor Chai. Until when does it have to be alive? Ad Shas Matan Domo Shel Chaveiro. Until you do the Matan Domim of the other sawyer. Once you do the Matan Domim of the other sawyer, then if it dies already, you don't need to replace it. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi says, V'ad Mosai Hizkiko Lioschai Ad Shas Matan Domim Shel Chaveiro, meaning Tichsiv Lechaper, because the pasuk says until you have an atonement. Ad Sheyechaper B'Domo Shel Chaveiro. Pasuk means to say the sawyer La'azazel has to be alive until you do the Matan Domim, until you do the kapara of the other sawyer. Aval Mishas Matan Domim V'elech, but once you do the Matan Domim, once you sprinkle or place the blood of the other sawyer, so then from that point on and onward, Afal Pisha Adayin Lo Hisvade, even though you didn't yet do the vidui, it's fine, meaning the vidui is not ma'akev. Lefi Seder HaMikros, if you look at the order of the psukim, the vidui comes after the Matan Domim. The psukim say V'chila Michaper V'gomer V'samach Aaron V'gomer. First you do the kapar of the Matan Domim, and then you have Aaron place his hands and do the smicha on the sawyer La'azazel and do the confession. In Meis Ein Sarach Acher, and if it dies at that point, you don't need to bring another one. Alma Vidui Lo Ma'akev. You see, according to Rabbi Yehuda, vidui is not ma'akev, and the Brisa continues. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Ad Shas Vidui Devarim, until the time of the vidui, meaning it has to be alive and you have to do the vidui. If you don't do the vidui, you're going to need to bring another one, meaning it is ma'akev. Rashi says, Kedefarish time l'kamon. We'll explain the reason for Rabbi Shimon as we go on. So in any case, you see over here, Machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the vidui is not ma'akev. According to Rabbi Shimon, the vidui is ma'akev. And the Gemara now says, B'mai komiflagi, what is the machlokas, meaning what is the root of this machlokas tanoim? Keretanya, as we learned in a brayso, lechaper, the pasuk again, it says lechaper for an atonement. Bekaparas domim hakosav medaber. This is talking about the kaparas domim. It's talking about the matan domim of the sa'ir. That's what it means to say. V'cheinu omer. Likewise, we find the pasuk using the same terminology. V'chilo michaper sakodesh. Talks about the exact same thing, talking about matan domim. Malahalan bekaparas domim, afkan bekaparas domim. Just like over there, it's talking about kaparas domim. So too over here, it's talking about kaparas domim. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda understands the word lechaper in this pasuk is talking about matan domim, and until that point, the Sa'ir HaMishtaleach has to be alive. After that, it doesn't need to be alive. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, no, lechaper olav, when it says lechaper olav, bekaparas devarim hakosam medaber, it's not talking about the matan domim, it's talking about kaparas devarim. It's talking about vidui when the person does a confession. Rashi says, v'cheinu omer, v'chila michaper sakodesh. That again, that's going to be Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Hu matan domim. That pasuk means matan domim. V'hikra v'sasoyer hachai, ad kan sarach lios chai. Until this point of the matan domim, it needs to be alive. But the other opinion, Rabbi Shimon says, lechaper olav, bekapara hamutelas olav, hakosam medaber. We're talking about the kapara that's mutelas olav, that's relevant to this animal, v'hu avidui. And that's talking about the vidui, that's talking about the confession. And as we mentioned before, this entire section of the Gemara that we just did is really out of place, because this section of the Gemara is talking about whether vidui is ma'akev. Now the Gemara returns to the other discussion of whether hagrola, whether drawing the lots is ma'akev. The Gemara says, Tashma, come and hear the following proof. This is a proof from a Tosefta. The Tosefta says, Shalu Talmidav es Rabbi Akiva. The students asked Rabbi Akiva the following question. Allah bismo, let's say in the left hand comes up the lot that is for Hashem. Ma'u sheyachzor liyamin. Can you go and switch it and just put it into the right hand? Amar lahen, so Rabbi Akiva said to them, Al titnu makom l'tzedukim lirdos, don't give an opportunity for the tzedukim to dominate. Rashi says, Al titnu makom l'tzedukim talmidim hacholkim ala Torah, those talmidim who are disagreeing, arguing on the Torah, lirdos v'limshol bohen, to dominate, to rule over them, l'kapeach cheschem b'dvar, meaning they're going to beat you in terms of discussion, in terms of debate. Sheyomru lefi ritzonim heimos makol, they'll say, look, you're doing whatever you want, you just switch it from one hand to the other, so it's not a good idea to switch it from the left to the right hand. So the Gemara now brings the following inference. The only reason why Rabbi Akiva was opposed was because you don't want to give room to the tzedukim to be able to argue. But if not for that reason, you can switch it from one hand to the other. So the Gemara says, didn't you say before, according to one opinion, the hagrola is ma'akev, meaning you have to draw the lots. And once it's been established by the left hand, how are you going to switch it now and say we're going to do the other animal? Doesn't make any sense. If you're going to say the hagrola is not ma'akev, that can make sense. You'll say, okay, the lottery is not needed anyway, so we'll ignore the lottery and we'll do whatever we want. But if you're going to say that the hagrola is ma'akev, it doesn't make sense that you could just switch hands. So the Gemara answers this price, or this Tosefta. Amar Rava says, Hachi Kamri, here's what the Tosefta really means. Allah hagorel bismol. If the lot comes up in the left side, can you switch that and the accompanying animal to the right side? In other words, you're not going to switch animals. You're not going to say, well, the animal Hashem was on the left, now we're going to use the one on the right Hashem. No, you take the same animal and you just switch their positions. Now you're still taking the hagrola seriously. And to that, Rabbi Akiva said, Amar lahem, Rabbi Akiva said to them, Al titnu makom l'tzedukim lirdos, it's not a good idea because it's still going to give room for the tzedukim to be able to argue and to be able to dominate in terms of that argument. And now the Gemara tries another proof in terms of whether the hagrola, the drawing of the lots, is ma'akev. Tashma, coming here a proof from the following brisa. Ilu nemar es hasoir asher olav. If it would have said the goat which it is upon, hayisi omer yanichenu olav, I would have said you have to take the lot and put it on top of the seir, on top of the goat. Talmud lomar Allah. The pasuk doesn't say olav. The pasuk says Allah olav, the one which you draw up the lot. Meaning, kevon she'Allah, once you pick up the lot, shuvein otzarach, there's no need to do anything more. The brisa seems to be saying once you pick up, you lift up the lot, you don't need to place it upon the animal. So the Gemara now wants to clarify. Lamai, what do we mean over here? Ilema le mitzvah, if we mean to say that even in terms of lechatchila, even in terms of a mitzvah, it's not necessary. Mechlal dahanacha mitzvah nami lo, does that mean to say that even lechatchila, even as a mitzvah, you don't need to do hanacha, you don't need to place the lot on top of the animal? That cannot be. Ela lav liakev. Rather, what does the brisa mean? The brisa means if you don't do the hanacha, it's not going to be a problem. It's not ma'akev to do the hanacha. Ushma mino hagrola ma'akva, hanacha lo ma'akva. The brisa is saying exactly this point. The hanacha, placing it on the animal, it's a mitzvah to do it, but it's not ma'akev. The implication being that the hagrola, the drawing of the lot in the first place, certainly is ma'akev. That's yet another proof that hagrola is ma'akev. The Gemara says that might not be what it means. Amar Rava says, Hachi Kamar, here's what it means. Ilu nemar asher olav, hayisi omer yanichenu olav achas shchita. If it said asher olav, I might think you have to leave the lot on top of the animal all the way until the time of the shchita. Talmud lomar asher olav. Therefore, the pasuk says, which you drew up. Kevon sha'ala, once you pick up the lot, shuvein otzarach, you don't need to do anything more. In other words, you just place it on the animal for one moment. That you need to do, but you don't need to leave it there. So the brisa is not saying that the hanacha is not ma'akev. The brisa is saying you do it for a moment, and then you don't necessarily need to leave it there. And once you understand the brisa in this fashion, that the brisa is teaching the hanacha only needs to be for a moment, and not all the way till the shas shchita, you can no longer draw an inference what's going on in terms of hagrola, because the whole point of the brisa is just to tell you the amount of time of hanacha. It's not to make any inference in terms of the halachas regarding the hagrola, regarding drawing the lots. And the Gemara now brings another proof from a brisa whether the hagrola is ma'akev. Tashma, coming here, v'yaso chatos, it says you're going to make the particular one that's la Hashem into a carbon chatos, the soyer la Hashem. Hagorol oseo chatos, the brisa says it is the lottery which makes this a carbon chatos. V'ein Hashem oseo chatos, but just calling it a carbon chatos does not make it a carbon chatos. Rashi says, v'ein Hashem im karol lo shem below gorol. The brisa is saying if you call this the chatos without having the lottery, it's not going to be a carbon chatos. And the Brisa continues, Sheyachol, because I might have thought, Valodinu, that you should make a kal v'chomer. U'ma'be mokum shelo kiddush hagorel, if in situations of karbonos where you have no lottery, kiddush Hashem, if you call it a certain carbon, then it becomes sanctified, it becomes that carbon. Mokum shekiddush hagorel, in this case, where a lottery can make it sanctified, Eino din shekiddush Hashem, certainly calling it that particular carbon, that should sanctify it, that should make it that carbon. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, V'yoso chatos, it says, this makes it a carbon chatos. Hagorel osa chatos, it's the lottery that creates the carbon chatos. V'yein Hashem osa chatos, but calling it by a chatos, that alone does not make it a carbon chatos. Rashi says, b'makom shelo kiddush hagorel, meaning b'shar karbonos. By other karbonos, there is no gorel. Hatzrichen perish kagon kinei zavin, v'zavos, v'yoldos, she'echad me'en chatos, v'echad me'en ola, these various karbonos of zavin, zavos, and yoldos, so one of them is a chatos, and one of them is an ola. Shelo kiddush hagorel, you don't have a lottery in that case. In kosav al shnei gorelos, if you were to draw lots, alechad chatos, v'alechad ola, you had one chatos, one ola, v'nosan alein, you put them on top of them, lo motzino sha'gorel kovim, we don't find any halacha that a gorel can make this one an ola and this one a chatos, v'lo yachol shanosan, that you wouldn't be able to change it, that this would set it as whatever carbon it is, kiddush Hashem, but in all those cases, if you call it that, that's what it is. Me'achar shekar lezu chatos v'lezu ola, once you call this particular bird a chatos, the other bird an ola, ein a kohen rashoy l'shanosan, a kohen cannot change it anymore. Kedamrinu lekamon, we're going to say this later on, mivalacha shtei sorim o shnei b'nei Yona, echad liola v'echad l'chatos, b'shas l'kicha hein nikvoin. At the time that you take them, at the time of the designation, it is set. Zuli ola v'zul chatos, this one for an ola and this one for a chatos. So kan over here, meaning over here by the soyer l'Hashem, shamatzinu shahagorel kovan, where we find that the gorel is koveya. Eino din sha'Hashem kovan, certainly if you call it by that name, certainly it should be koveya, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph.